Welcome to Writing the Wrong Way. This is a podcast for serious writers who want to develop their skills in artistry and stand out in a crowded industry by taking intelligent, creative risks. I'm your host, Jonathan Ball. I hold a PhD in literature. I'm the author of numerous books, and I take a very analytical approach to art making, emphasizing both efficiency and experimentation. Please consider doing me a favor and pre-ordering my new book from Coach House Books, The National Gallery. It contains sonnets for Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, elegies in the manner of Rilke but for a dead iPhone, and other strange missives from yours truly, the Poet Laureate of Hell. So go to thenationalgallery.ca for more information. That's thenationalgallery.ca. Thanks. And I'm here with Keith Cadieux, and we're just, making too much noise, putting our cups down on the table, and talking about, today we're going to talk about short story manuscripts, because I just, not too long ago, finished and sold a short story manuscript, which was a long, term project. It's something we'll get into shortly, but Keith, my short story book is going to be called The Lightning of Possible Storms, and is going to come out with the book Hug in fall 2020. And Keith, is in the process of finishing up a short story manuscript as well. Yep. Casting or about, to finish it and then for someone to publish it. And so I thought it might be an interesting, just topic conversation for me and Keith to talk about, just the struggles and, process of putting together a short story manuscript and trying to get somebody to publish the damn thing. Yeah. Because one of the things that you may or may not know if you're listening, to this podcast, depending on, what your knowledge of the book industry is that short story collections are possibly, maybe correct me, what do you think, Keith? My impression and belief from my experience and looking around talking to other people, it seems to me that probably the least desirable thing you could possibly try to publish is a short story collection. I've found it harder to publish that book than to publish a poetry book. Mm-hmm. And certainly, and I think there's certain genres of nonfiction that have kind of and fiction that have kind of, I wouldn't say died, but nearly died. Like the Western seems to have nearly died. But then, all of a sudden, The Sisters Brothers is a big hit. Yep. So you have all sorts of exceptions. Short stories, have their day in the sun every now and again. It's not like nobody publishes them, but it's very undesirable. I sent it to an agent at one point, and within one day, I got a rejection from the agent, basically saying, I don't want to agent a short story book. Sorry.
Yeah, they're weird. They're sort of in between. I think they're undesirable in terms of the market, the marketing aspect of it. So I would say that with a poetry book, that people are more willing because people who publish poetry seem to be more willing to take the risk of, a poetry book is always going to be risky. You're never it might take off, it might not. So there's sort of this built-in idea that, all right, let's take a chance here. And the story collection is sort of in between the poetry risk and the safe and stable choice of the novel. And it's just sort of fallen through the cracks in between where it is a more risky endeavor than a novel, but they want the same kind of market permeability, I guess, that they're hoping it's going to break through the same way a novel would, and they don't. But they're out there, they've always been present. So there's this weird bit where they haven't completely fallen off. I wonder if that is just because authors won't stop writing them, rather than there's enough people buying them.
I remember, I think a lot of times it has to do with, sort of along the lines of what you're saying, I think there's this, publishers will often have a poetry program, they publish poetry books, in this poetry program. Maybe it's a series or whatever, or they have so many they do a year. But then fiction, they just have a fiction program, right?
Yeah.
Also, and then like short stories. So weirdly, I think like short stories end up competing with novels for space on a publisher's list. And as you say, for them to take a short story often means that they're not taking a novel.
Yeah.
And so I think from their point of view, it just seems like a losing proposition a lot of the time. Like, well, why not take a novel? Like if I've got a fiction slot open, why not put a novel there rather than short stories? So it tends to be a very hard sell in that way. And I can't blame the publishers for that. But like rarely does the publisher have an actual like short story mandate. So even if they are publishing short stories, which most publishers publish short stories from time to time, if not regularly, but that tends to be very minimal compared to like even the amount of so when I was shopping my short story book around, one publisher had it for quite some time and was very interested in it and was very complimentary about it, but basically came back to me and saying, we just published a short story book. We're kind of waiting to see how it does. Yeah. And then we just can't afford to take another short story risk right now. And so that's what it boils down to. Like, so even when they've got like an interest in publishing short stories, and like in this case they had just published a short story book, and then they had accepted another one. So, but then now they're in the position where they can't justify accepting a third one, kind of thing. Yeah. In 2 years, whatever it was. So, I feel like there's that sort of problem that you're running up against trying to place a short story collection. Like, but people do publish them, of course, and people read them. It's maybe not like as much as they read novels.
Yeah, but they're out there, and then every now and then there's the unicorn of the publishing world that only does short story collections. So like in horror, there's Undertow, which only does story collections. They're really, really great. So Undertow is an unsung champion of the form that produces really beautiful books and consistently wins awards. But I don't know I don't see their books in bookstores here very often. Like they're not. So you got to do the online route, and you have to know who they are and track them down. But they're great. Like they're out there. There's an interesting market vacuum there where the really good stuff is out there and it's not getting in front of the right people somehow.
I wonder sometimes like so anyway, putting together a short story book, like what are some of the things that you have been like, where are you at in this short story book? So where I'm at with my short story book is I put it together and I got a contract for it. It's coming out fall 2020. So it's all done at this point, but I just wrote a short story the other day that I may, when I go back, when it's time to do the editing process for that book, which I haven't really entered yet, I think likely in that process, we'll see what the editor says, but likely in that process, I'll end up maybe swapping like a story or two here and there. Like I may put a newer work in and take something out. I tend to do that kind of thing a lot in the editing process. So I don't think I'm done necessarily, although it's theoretically done. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got the industry side of it now, so you're further along than my manuscript is. But so I'm still in the stage of finishing it in order to send it out to industry. So either to an agent, to publishers, or both. Like just pepper spraying it about, seeing if I can get any kind of interest. But yeah, I would say for me that has been the hardest struggle, is figuring out the overall shape of it. How many stories is enough? When is it going to stop? When have I got enough? How much more do I have to add before it's done? And I think meeting with you has been the kick in the ass needed, because I could do that process forever. There could always be, I just need these 3 more stories, or now this one doesn't fit anymore. So you're just constantly reshaping it. And so I'm at the point now where under duress, I've just been like, all right, I'm going to put all of this stupid fucking material into one place, and I'm going to see, is this, like, whether I think thematically it's done or not, is there enough for a book here? And there is. So I'm making the call that like there's one story in there that is just not yet finished. I was like, okay, I'm going to finish the draft of this one story. and then it's out, and it's going out the door. And then you've taken a very pragmatic, useful approach in that you sent it out before you were done with all the niggling details, because otherwise you'd never send it out. So you've sent it, you've gotten it accepted, and you're still at the point where like you're still able to make those kind of changes.
I would have done it sooner. Like I would have sent mine out sooner, except that my collection has this kind of frame narrative. Yeah. So it has it has to have a certain amount of stories because of how the frame narrative works. It has to have like, these interstitial pieces between the stories at all points. And so I had to like write all this stuff, and I had to like have it more, a bit more of a skeleton than you maybe normally need in a short story book. If I hadn't had to do that, I would have sent it out earlier. Yeah. And maybe I would have been smarter to send it out earlier anyway, because it took quite a while like to get it accepted somewhere. But at the same time, I think normally but even in my case, I was kind of still doing a variation of what last time Keith and I were talking about this, I was advising him to like do exactly what he was just saying, like just like put it all in one spot, see how much you got, and so on. Because often what I find when people are working towards a collection like this is that they have, and I see this a lot for poetry collections, is people will have like a bunch of material in a bunch of different places. And so it's like they're often like way further along the process than they think they are. And the other thing that people forget is because they get so obsessed with like making their manuscript perfect. I think a lot of times people forget that they can have like put together a solid manuscript, and then as they like write new stories that are better than the stories they've got, they can just swap them or add them. So like if you had like a book, say you wanted to have a book of 10 stories for whatever reason, like that was the number you liked for some reason. If you wrote like, if story 3 is the weakest, but it's still a good story, and then you write a new 11th story, you can just like switch it. And like continually be improving the manuscript until it's accepted and so on. Which doesn't mean you should be saying like a manuscript that's not like your best work, but like you should keep in mind like your best work is going to just change over time, and a collection is nice in the sense that you can keep updating it, setting it out again. And then even when it gets accepted, you got that space before it comes out when you can still be like updating it and like making it better. Yeah,
for sure. So that's where it's the same issue for a novel, but I feel like it's compounded with a short story collection in that the constant dicking around with it can go on forever, and you sort of do have to hit a point where you're just going to be like, all right, no, that's enough. I'm going to have to send it along. And because it's that microcosm of it's never really done. And you've said this quote many times that a work of art is never finished. It's just abandoned.
Yeah, it's been attributed to various people, but it's certainly
a story collection is like up to a dozen pieces of work that you are trying to decide whether or not to abandon and dump out as one. So that was something that for me, like it's been years that I've been playing around with this idea that I'm going to have a collection, right? And it's just always been, well, I don't have enough material. I don't have enough thematically connected material, or or just like, I have to finish the stories I'm currently working on, and then there's just always something. Yeah. So now I'm trying to put the foot down and just be like, okay, no, like enough. And then it can, like after it goes out, it can still change. So I can send it out this first run, I can send it out to 20 places. If none of them take it, or if I send out another batch, that manuscript might be slightly different. It might have 1 or 2 more stories, might have ditched one.
There's an idea in software development, which is that you come up with what they call the minimal viable product. And you release it. And then you figure out what the bugs are because you released it. Like you collect user data, you know, and so on, and then you like improve it and send it again. And that's not what you do with a book, but I think there's like a way you can do a version of that with a manuscript, where it's like you get the book you get the manuscript to the point where it is what it is. Like I've said this a few times, but like my belief is that if you're working on a manuscript, you should get it to the point where it is what it is. And what I mean by that is it's a strong manuscript that is publishable, but maybe isn't the perfect final version. But it is basically at this point where it is what it is. every change you make will be a change to improve it potentially, but won't actually change what it is.
Yeah.
So like if it's a horror story about, zombies in a supermarket who have, and it culminates in some sort of weird, orgy. Like if that's what the story is, you can make a lot of superficial changes to it, but like that's what it is. Like at the end of the day, like that's the story. Unless you cut out the orgy or make them into vampires, like it is what it is. And like, whether they go to, if you move it so they're not in a supermarket anymore, but they're in like, the moon base, well, it's still what it is. It's still zombie orgy, the reckoning. You know what I mean? Like you can make a change that doesn't alter the thing fundamentally, but just like maybe makes it better or worse.
Yeah.
And I feel like once you're at that, once you can get, I feel like your goal as a writer, really, people make their goal, have a perfect finished final book. But your goal should really just be get the book to where it is what it is. And then start, seeing, and then get it like to a publishable state, but maybe not the state where you want to publish it exactly, but a publishable state. And then I think you should start sending it out, because when it is what it is, people can reject it or accept it because they want it or they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, especially...
And like every change you make would maybe like up the ante a little bit. Like maybe it'll increase your chances of them accepting it a little bit, but probably it won't, really. Like they want it or they don't. Like they want the zombie orgy or they don't want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like whether it's on the moon or whether it's in the supermarket, doesn't matter.
Yeah. The process can take so long that to create your own delays is just, it's not really viable. It's gonna get the better of you at some point if you don't. You'll just take the risk there. Like, but you're right. Like the understanding the aboutness of it is, I think, the key, and I think you can tell. So that was the process of putting all the material in that place and seeing how much do I have. Like, so it showed that, and then it sort of broke down my logistical argument of like, here's why it's not ready, because deep down I knew what it was, and it's everything that I'm contributing is not changing what this manuscript is. I'm just telling myself I don't have enough. And then you sort of, you shatter that, and then you're left with, do you know what this book is? And it's like, okay, yes, I do. And all right.
What I see people do is they'll have 12 stories, and they're done, these 12 stories. So they've got a book length manuscript. And then what they'll do is they'll sit there and they'll move the stories in different orders. So it's like, they'll be like, well, maybe I'll put this story first, or maybe this story will go first, or maybe I'll put this story third. They'll start moving them around, and it's like, well, I just want to punch them in the face. It's like, the book's not, it reads different, and it kind of is therefore a different experience. And yes, maybe, if 4 was after 6 instead of before 5, then that story would be in a better place and the book would be better overall. But it's not going to be a different book.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing that I think like catches people up. Like, they're making superficial changes to their manuscript. And when I say superficial, I don't mean that they're not good or bad or like changes you shouldn't make. Like, maybe you should make all those changes. But even like pulling a story out and like replacing it with a different story, to me, I would say that's a superficial change in the sense that it doesn't change what the book is. Like, it's maybe improved the book by putting a stronger story in place of a weaker one, but it's still like a book of zombie orgies. Yeah. Like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it still is like a horror short story collection, or whatever. And so like, you can make it better or worse, but like at a certain point, this is who you are, in book form, and people will like it or they don't.
Yeah.
Like, I think you should be focusing as a writer and trying to get the manuscript to a point where a publisher could accept it or not accept it. And at that point, you should start sending it to publishers. And then, like, if you want to keep working on it, fine. But why not, like, work on it when you get a deadline? So, like, because if a publisher actually can accept the manuscript at that point, and I hope people don't misunderstand this as like me saying like send work out before it's ready. I don't mean that. I mean send work out when it's ready to be published, but maybe it's not exactly up to your standards, because or like it's not exactly what you want. Like it's up to your standard, but it's not exactly how you want it. Because the reality is you'll keep changing your mind.
Yeah.
and like what's going to happen is when a publisher accepts a book, is you're going to have like a period of like a year, 2 years. Like I've got a 2-year period from when the book got accepted to when it's going to come out.
Yeah.
So like I'm not going to sit there and work on the book for 2 years, but like I could, right? You know, and at some point I'm going to get feedback from the editor for the press. No matter what stage it's at when you send it in, they're going to come back with notes, and you're going to have to do more editing. And you're going to have the opportunity and the time to make major changes. Like, you know, even as big as taking a story out and replacing it with another one that you just wrote, you know, a week ago or whatever. Like it didn't even exist when they accepted the manuscript. And so like you're going to have the space to accept, to write new stuff. You're going to have the space to do the final editing. They have a process in place to help you do the editing. Like the whole point, one of the main reasons you're publishing with somebody rather than self-publishing it is to get this editing feedback and to spend that time, right? And then the other thing is like now you have a deadline, and it all is real, and you're not just screwing around forever, because at some point they're going to take the thing away from you, more or less, right? And at that point, as you say, like it's been abandoned, you know, for good or ill. And people get like very nervous about like, well, what if, you know, my book comes out and it's not exactly what I wanted it to be? It's like, well, when has that ever happened to anyone?
Yeah.
Like find me the author whose book came out and it was exactly what they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that you can't have that as like a goal, but it's like it's a shitty goal, basically, is what it boils down to, because it's unrealistic.
Yeah, and that's a bar that constantly moves.
Yeah, it just moves.
What you want that book to be today is not 2 years from now. It won't be the same. And after it's been out for 5 years, your idea of what it should have been will be different.
And the other thing, people who've never published a book before, maybe we can get into this a little bit, because like people who've never published a book before have a really bizarre idea of what you will care about when you publish a book. So like one thing that I've found that, you know, is like you never read that book again. Mm-hmm. You don't even think about it half the time. Like really, like I can't remember what's in some of my books.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, do you remember what Gaze is about? Do you remember?
I remember the major beats, but yeah, no, I haven't read Gaze.
When's the last time you read it? When did it come out?
2010.
And when's the last time you probably read it?
Like 2011, when I would have done a reading. I
didn't read the whole thing then.
No.
So probably the last time you read it front to back was, you know, in 2009.
The editing,
like the year before, or like
like when you get it, you'll look at the first few pages and you'll skim and you'll be very happy. And like, but you don't sit there and read it cover to cover.
Yeah, you don't sit there and read
anymore.
your book. You read it like 20 times by that point, and you're sick of it, and then you move on with life. And it's like you're proud of it, and people bring it up, and maybe you do reading from time to time. But like when I read from Clockfire now, and I love Clockfire, you know, I'm very proud of it. But like it came out in 2012, so you know, 7 years ago now. Every time I pick up to read from it, I have to flip through and decide what to read, and I'm like, sometimes I forget like I wrote this poem, I wrote that poem, and like I don't think about it unless somebody brings it up to me.
Yeah,
and it's not that I don't. And I think that's the best book I've written and published. I would recommend it to anybody who doesn't know my work. But I can't say a day goes by. Like if I think about Clockfire in a month, it's probably a rare month.
Yeah, we have a different relationship to it when it comes out, but also just when it's work.
Yeah, it's done.
Like the same people, like people who make TV shows, like they don't watch their own show.
No,
that was something. I think it was a Seinfeld interview, like one of the comedians in Cars or something, and someone asked him what he thinks of Seinfeld now. He's like, I've never watched it. I've never watched my own show. Why would I watch it? I made it. And you can't make it and then be the reader. It's really, this weird bit of fudgery that is sort of, you're always constantly trying to anticipate what the reader's experience is going to be, but you fundamentally can't ever have that experience of your own book.
Yeah, they say you should write the book you want to read that you can't find anywhere, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. But at the same time, the irony of it is once you do it, now you don't care anymore.
And
it's not that you don't care. I shouldn't say that, but like now you've done it, and so it's done, and your mission has been accomplished, and so now you're like you got new things to do.
Sure, that was when Gaze came out, and even the editing the Shadow book. That was something that I think if you haven't published yet, you might be surprised at it. Like I was surprised at how sick of my own work I was. Just how sick of it. Like I didn't want to look at it. You read it so many times with such an analytical eye, and you just get tired. And like you say, like at some point there will be notes, and no matter how much work you're putting in, there's always something else to be fixed. And when you're just sitting in your room by yourself and you haven't sent the manuscript out to anybody, like you can get lost in that microcosm forever, and it's sort of boundlessly entertaining when you're by yourself. And then when it's deadline focused and when you're working towards this goal out of it, like where does welcome out awfully fast. You get tired of re-examining it so many times, and so I was very sick of everything I put out by the time it went out.
Yeah, and this is like the proof. My favorite part of the publishing process is when you get a proof. So for people who don't know what a proof is, it's when a publisher has taken your book and designed it, and they've laid it out the way it's going to look. So you're getting like this PDF file where you can print it out, and everything is basically how it would look when the book was printed, and it's got these little like markers to show you where the page would end, like where it would be trimmed and cut and everything. So you see like it's the right size. You can see like the spreads of like what's on page 2 and page 3. You can see them side by side, and so on. And so my favorite part of it's the first time that you actually have a file in front of you now that looks like your book. So as opposed to just like a manuscript, it's like here's the book designed and laid out and everything. And when I first published my first book, I was surprised how excited I was when the proofs came, and like it was a real book, and like it felt like a real book even though it wasn't physically existing yet. And I was also surprised by how disappointed I was when the book was printed in my hands, because it was like I felt nothing. I opened a box of my books, and I was so excited. I got my first box of books. I opened it up, and like there's like 30 books in there or whatever, and I pulled out like my first like printed copy. I'm holding a book I published in my hands, which I've been dreaming about doing for my whole life, and I was like, whatever. It didn't matter to me at all. But it just was like, oh my God. Well, because by that point, I like read this book 80 times. And it's like, I've been thinking about it for years, and it's like, but then there's like this big gap where I started doing other things, and I had to work on it for a while. Like at a certain point, it just becomes work, and it's not that it's not still like something that matters to you, or that you're not proud of, or whatever, or it's still something you love doing and everything. But it's at the same time, it's like it's meaningful, but it's like you got other things to do. Like yes, you know what I mean? Like it just has become normalized in a certain way. But the proofs to me are really exciting still. Like I just went through the proofs for the National Gallery a couple months ago. This is my book coming out in September, and so which is a poetry collection. And so I get the proofs. So before that point, you've done a lot of editing. Yeah. And then now you're getting the proofs. The book is in like layouts. I went through, I think it was 9 proofs. So 9 different times I like sent my edits and changes to my editor. They made the changes, then they send the newly designed file back to me. I made more changes and so on. I did this 9 times. So like, and every time I do that, I read the book front to back, because I'm paranoid, and you don't necessarily have to do that, by the way. Like I read the book front to back. So like by the time I'm done like the proof stage, I've read in the span of like a month, I've read the book 9 times front to back. And at that point, you never want to read the book again. Like as much as you love it and are proud of it, like you literally don't want to read it again. Yeah. Or maybe you'll read a page here and there if they pay you.
If they pay you, yes.
Right. Like if they pay you to read it, then you'll read it. Like that's how you feel about it at a certain point, even if you're still proud of it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm still very proud of everything that came out, but I don't read them for fun. We'll put it that way.
But in terms of putting a short story collection together, so what when you first like were thinking of like doing this, or even like maybe this point, like what do you feel is important to consider when somebody's putting a short story collection together? Like if you had to like at this point, looking back at what you've done so far, if you had to like give advice to somebody thinking about doing a short story collection, like what would you maybe say like is the place to start?
Ooh.
This presumes, of course, that you've written more than one short story.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, you would.
Like you've written a bunch of short stories by this point.
If you're going to think of a collection, yeah, hopefully you have more than one started already. But yeah, like even my concept for this one has changed a lot. Like I'm not a.
Well, just talk about the concept for a second.
Sure.
So do you think a short story collection needs to have a concept?
No, I don't. And I was really resistant to that for my own collection. Like I like a lot of collections that I know of that have an overarching concept that I really like, but it wasn't something that I was setting out to do, and that might just mostly be because I didn't have that overarching concept, and I don't write. I wasn't writing these stories that way, that they didn't come out. Like they all came out quite singularly as their own concepts, and they weren't designed to fit an existing framework,
or
right?
Thematically connect,
and that was something that, like, well, if I'm going to have this thematic connection, I need to know that before, or that was the idea I had. So, like, there's definitely gradations or layers of that kind of concept. So you can have a really high concept thing. So yours has like a frame.
Yeah, but my stories are very different. So, like so my book, maybe I should say something about it. Maybe you can say something about yours as well. Like, so Lightning and Possible Storms. I'll talk more about it. Like, I'll be sick of talking about it soon. I'll talk more about it later. But the Lightning and Possible Storms is like, it's a short story collection, but it begins with this sort of framing narrative where this woman is working in a coffee shop or a tea shop, and she has, this writer comes in every day, and writes and doesn't really say anything to her, and then leaves a tip and leaves. And one day he leaves this book behind, and she picks the book up, and it's and reads it, and notices that it's dedicated to her, and she's freaked out. And she's upset. She goes home, takes this book home, doesn't know what she's supposed to do now, but then starts getting curious and reading the book. So anyway, there's a storyline that kind of progresses with her throughout the novel, and then in between she's reading this short story book, and it starts to kind of move into a totally different space than what it sounds like it is now, and move into a kind of surreal, strange space. But initially, there's this continuing narrative, and then in between these little short stories, and they don't connect. And this is her initial mystification, is they don't seem to actually connect or relate to anything, where she had expected this connection and relation. And so eventually things start to cohere a bit more in a kind of meaningful way, but initially it establishes this conceit that you've got a continuing narrative interspersed between these distinct short stories that are very different in tone and style and genre and length and so on. So mine's pretty disconnected, but they all have this kind of union of again, this idea of somehow what is kind of possible here through the form of an artwork, because I'm really interested in that overriding idea, what can we use art for, whether it succeeds or fails, and where does it fail us, where does it help us, where is it maybe we think it's going to help us but it actually is hurting us. I'm really interested in that kind of relation. So to me, that's a vague theme that kind of plays out through these stories, but then it has this kind of, it's very distinct and they're very disconnected otherwise.
Yeah.
But part of that was my solution to I felt like I should have a concept and a theme overriding, but I was writing singular stories individually that were very different, and I don't have a consistent style, I don't feel.
Yeah.
Which I think probably hurts me. but I don't, I don't think I have a consistent style.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to think of how can I have a book that has some consistency, but also has this, it was a carnival
ground in a sense, where it has like all these different things. You can go here and do this game, and go here and do that thing, and go here and get a corn dog, and go here and find a haunted house. Like I wanted like that kind of, all that difference, but also like some consistency. So that was my like way of figuring it out, which I guess people have to judge, what they think of it.
Sure.
But what was your kind of approach when you were?
Mine was so similarly. I was doing the stories just all on their own, and they were all about their own concept rather than here's how they're going to fit into a larger piece.
And these are mostly horror.
They're horror
stories, so they're more like because I'm jumping around, but you're mostly looking at horror stories.
Yeah, and that is not necessarily by design, but this is where it always goes. It always skews dark. So basically, at an early stage, I am just what I have. I'm going to cobble together, and that's going to be a manuscript, and we'll see how that works. And for a while, that was just the pragmatic. I don't want it to take years and years. Once I have enough, and then I just started taking years and years, and with this idea that, of course, it's not done yet. And then eventually, what I found now I do have enough stories that I don't need to cram in every story that I've done in order to make it fit a manuscript, because that was part of what I was worried about too. Is if I don't include everything, it's not going to be long enough. I don't have that problem anymore. Now there is enough that I can leave some out that aren't as good or that don't seem to fit. And so what has weirdly happened, even though there isn't one overarching theme, I have inadvertently created a lot of doubles in my thematic concerns. So I have two stories that are about cannibals. I have two stories that are centered on laughing. I have two stories that are centered on some kind of technology. I have two stories that are about dead bodies interfering with the living in some way. So there's just this weird way that I've folded in over myself. I have three that are focused on technology in some form. So I have, by fluke or what have you, or lack of originality, created an overarching idea in that I have stories that are approaching similar ideas from different aspects.
I think that kind of thing happens mostly to authors. Like even when I'm looking, because I look at my manuscript again, when I was putting the things together, I mean, I left stories out that I'd written, which is maybe something, you gotta, if you've written a bunch of stories, like you get the question of like, well, what do you not include? Yeah. And like for me, like I didn't include a lot of stuff that just like tonally, I don't know, it just didn't feel, it felt too jokey or, but even though I have a lot of like funnier stuff, it was like usually it would turn or have some less jokey dimension in it. It's like I left like a Lovecraft parody out, but I included like a funnier story that almost is like a Robert Balser parody, but nobody knows who Robert Balser is, so it doesn't really read the same way, and then like, but I found like even if I'm like writing like a science fiction story, or if I'm writing like a weird meta fictional comedy, like I had a lot of the same concerns, which I think is kind of inevitable typically. But certainly if you work in the same genre or roughly the same genre and you have a lot of the same concerns, it'll come through more cleanly. Yeah, it eventually comes out. But like what I find interesting is that the stories that have these common elements, for the most part, like those stories are tonally or they're wildly different. So the two cannibal stories you've read are, so I've got the one that's the Wendigo story, which is like a period piece. It's very moody. And then the other one is Donner Parties, which is like the full-on gore fest. Those are. I just view those as very different. What are you using for a title for the book? I was suggesting Donner Parties. Yeah, right now it's Donner Parties. Yeah. So what did you have before? I forget. It was it may still be like a longer version of either just Donner Parties or Donner Parties and Other Antisocial Gatherings. Sure. Which is long, but. So I had a different. I had a different one. I had a different one before because I had a novella that I was working on that I've ditched. That I'm not going to be working on anymore.
So that's probably where that's.
But anyway, I think Donner Parties is a great title for sure. Even if you add the other stuff, but I like Donner Parties personally. They'll put stories on it somewhere, I'm sure.
Somewhere they will, I'm sure.
But like, you know,
but
that's how it goes, I guess. I really am I'm really trying. I haven't really gone into it with my publisher about this stuff yet, but like, I'm really hoping I cannot have the word stories on the cover.
Sure.
Because I just hate it. I don't know what it is. I just don't like it.
There are people get away with it. It does happen.
I mean, we'll see, I guess.
Like Ted Chiang's Story of Your Life and others got around it in a good way. But there's a couple others that don't.
Like, I don't
no,
know
you don't have to put
it's
that.
annoying.
But
you know, it's not like it's the worst.
Especially since yours has an overarching theme, you can.
I feel like that's how I'm going to get around it. We'll see. I really, you know, I haven't gone into cover discussion or anything like that yet.
Yeah.
Although, you know, I've got my idea for a cover already. We'll see how it goes. Usually, I'm pretty good about getting the covers I want, which is unusual. But you know, I've been pretty good about it for the most part.
That's good.
But titles are a hard thing. My title comes from a quote from Foucault, weirdly, but like it's this great, like, beautiful quote where he describes what he wants, like an essay to do or what criticism to do. But really, I read this quote and I thought, well, really, what he's describing is what fiction does, and so all the things he wants criticism to do is like what fiction is already doing. And so I kind of was just using that like little beautiful mini essay quote as like a epigraph. So, you know, again, unless it gets taken out, like that's where that's the epigraph, and then that explains like kind of where the title is from. But it's kind of a confusing thing on a certain level, I think, maybe. But I think it just situates kind of like this idea really quickly of like this hybrid idea, like, you know, this is like a collection of short stories that's title comes from this critical quote and so on. What's a last piece of advice you might have, or what's a frustration or a struggle you find?
Frustration.
Where are you at with? Where do you think is next for you with the short story? Just sending it out at this point. You're just finishing it up.
I'm finishing one story draft. So this is my long. I knew it was going to be a long story just by the concept of it, but this is my King in Yellow riff.
Oh, yes.
Which there's no way that's going to get picked up by anybody else because it's a King in Yellow ripoff. And those, there's already been a bunch of collections of those, so I can't, those anthologies have been done, so I can't send it to, there's no upcoming Carcosa anthology because there's already been a bunch. So I'm a little too late to the bandwagon for that one. And because it's long, so it likely won't get published anywhere else. So it's sort of the same problem I had with my story Stuck. So I created an anthology in order to put it in to publish it myself.
It was so long.
So I'm just finishing that draft. So that's a story idea that I've really liked for a really long time, and I've just struggled to bring it together all the way to the end in a way that I really like.
That's a thing for people to consider too when they're putting story manuscripts together, is maybe they have a story or are planning to write a story where it's just going to be too long, but not like too long for like normal journal publication. So maybe like you got a 7,000, 8,000, 10,000 word story, something that's like a bit too long for really a journal to accept, but way too short for to be
a book on its own.
But could maybe fit in a short story manuscript, because usually a short story manuscript is going to, I don't know, it really ranges, but like I would say broadly they probably run from like 45, 50 to 80,000 words, most likely. Maybe 100,000 on the outside. Yeah,
for really big ones. Most of them, most places, the minimum is 40,000 words, which is not huge.
Yeah, mine's I think 50,000 roughly.
Yeah, so it's definitely doable. And in terms of like advice to myself that other people might benefit from, is you got to get out of your own way.
Yeah,
a lot. Like the only reason it's not done now, it wasn't done years ago, is me. It really could have been done before now, and I just needed the kick. And I've had some life stuff that got, but nothing so monumental that it couldn't have, just gotten out the door a little bit sooner.
I was shocked when I finally was like, you know what, I'm gonna put this storybook together, blah blah blah, and I'm really gonna work on it. I was shocked by how fast I finished.
Yeah.
Because I had done so much of the work already and not even paid attention to it.
Yeah, and that's what I found with this project too, is that as I was becoming less productive and beating myself up for not producing as much and not getting as much work done, and then sort of actively avoiding it, was because it was so close to the end. And it in a lot of ways, it's terrifying to end it and then put it out in the world, because, well, that might be the final word on it. And if you never finish it, then you can just always say you're always working on the damn thing. But this period where I've been in a bit of a fallow period right now, where I haven't been producing as much as, but it's because I've got a whole book that I won't sit down and finish. Like, all I have to do is finish it.
Yeah, it often doesn't take as long as, or people will sometimes get held up like saying, oh, I got this new story idea.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know what? One, you could again just send if the book's done, you can send it off. If you finish that new story and you get a book accepted, then great, throw the story in the book, or publish another short story book later.
For sure.
If you really are worried about it, like
some of the story ideas that I was certain were going to be included, I've just been like, well, I'm not far enough along, so what if I just ditch those? Do I still have enough? Oh, I do. Well, great. So,
I just did. I one of the things I did to finish my book was I just was like, I had this big list of like stories I was supposed to finish. I decided not to finish them.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Except for this one.
Now the book's done.
There's this one that I'm not budging on. That one's going to be in it. But there's others that it's like, okay, this is just, it's going to make it an 80,000 word manuscript, and all it's doing is delaying the finishing. Because if I wait until those are all done, then there'll be another one.
And also some other making the book harder to publish.
Yeah.
When it's already, because it's now too long or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, like, unless you're Stephen King, they are not taking a 600-page story collection.
Even if you're Stephen King, they
probably should
not have it and to get a novel instead.
Yeah, that's true.
King, I always will give King credit as one of the only people. I think it was once pointed out to me by somebody that Stephen King was pretty much the only best-selling mainstream author that still wrote short stories consistently.
Yeah, and it's true that they come out quite fairly regularly, and it'll be a long time between collections, but when the collections come out, they're huge. Like, there's a lot of material in there.
King even wrote in one of his story prefaces, or his short story introductions, that there's no reason for him to write short stories anymore.
Yeah, that's true. He's not doing it for money. But they get, I guess he gets film rights for probably about half of them.
He probably would be better off making novels, right?
Yeah.
But this is what he says anyway, and he's like, but whatever.
Yeah.
I like short stories. I think it's important to write short stories, and so everyone's different, but I always admired that about King, that here's a guy who is still doing this thing, even though he probably would be in his best interest to stop doing it.
He just does it because he likes it.
Well,
and often his collections are good.
Yeah, his collections are often better than his novels.
Yes.
I mean, I like a lot of his novels still, but the last one I read was just brutal. Yeah. But King's got some great stuff, and his short story collections are my favorite stories. One of my favorite stories ever is still Survivor Type.
Yes,
where doctor is stranded on a desert island and is cutting off parts of his own body and eating it. But because he's a doctor, he knows exactly
how to do it without killing himself
as long as possible.
Yeah.
How long could you survive just eating bits of yourself on a desert island? Yeah. It's a great, gruesome, funny, weird story.
It's a good gory one. He's got a couple of good Lovecraftian ones too. He's got one called N, which is all about
that's a great story.
I've
got the graphic novel of that somewhere.
Yeah, and seeing the creature in the grass and everything. Mm-hmm. That's a great story.
Well, big tip with a short story collection is just to fucking put your short story collection together. Stop screwing around.
Stop screwing around.